Hi, I'm Fight, and today I want to talk about my AI workflows. This is driven by some questions that I got lately, and also because I just want to give a quick snapshot of how I use it today. Because I'm not a maximalist in my workflows, I like to keep them simple, but I do use them heavily, and so I think there might be something there that's interesting to people. Now, I've prepared three kind of small workflows because I think they can be captured nicely in a video. I've not tried them, so this is a live demo. Um, but I'm reasonably certain that they fit the bill just because that's how I would usually use it. Now, two of them operate on the carp repository and one on Alembic. To give you a quick overview, so carp is a programming language that I work on, that I'm a co-maintainer of, and Alembic is a network automation platform that I work on that is actually developed AI first. So I use AI for a lot of the development. Now, for carp specifically, I have one PR that needs to be rebased, and I kind of want to go through the issues and figure out for the last few whether I can still reproduce them and whether they should be fixed, kind of triage them. And for Alembic, I kind of want to just see where it's at because I haven't touched it in 3 weeks. And I kind of forgot where we landed last time, right? So to do this, I've opened three terminal windows, and I'm just gonna start them in turn, the tasks, and then jump back and forth as the agent comes back. So for the first thing, I'm going to ask Codex. Codex is one of the three agents that I use. I use Gemini, Claude, and Codex, or the three providers. Um, and here I'm using Codex in the terminal on 5.3 with extra high thinking, so it's going to be a little bit slow, but I like it that way. I also only have 15% of my weekly allowance left, but it resets tomorrow morning, so I have tokens to burn. Now, what I want to do first is I'm going to ask it about the backlog. Check the backlog of issues on and I have an agenda with this, but first let me write. I can't write and type so well together. Um, whether the issues are reproducible and triage them roughly. I'm just gonna tell it to limit it to a reasonable number, just because I'm not going to look at any 100 issues at once, right? Even with an agent, I'm not gonna do that usually. So I just kicked it off. What I want to show with this is it does not have a GitHub MCP installed. I used to have that, but it is so good at using command line tools now that it can actually just, it knows how to use the GitLab CI to list things and so on. It knows how to do things automatically, so I don't even need to tell it that. Now, while we do this, I'm going to start another one, and I'm going to say, let me just copy this poll here, and what do we have, right? Rebase this against the newest master branch. Conflicts for me and tell me what. Right? So I'm really minimal in my prompts usually, except when I'm not. So when I'm not, I have a whole lot of prompts that I use that are bigger, but I don't keep them in my head, nor do I try to, sure, why not? Nor do I try to actually um, somehow like keep them around as text files. Instead, I've built a little tool for myself that's also on the Cyberwitchery account. That's called Familiar. Oh, this is already trying to execute some carp, so that's cool. I don't run it um, on what do you call it? Dangerously skip permissions or something. I find that I'm better in the flow when I can see kind of what it's doing. So that's why I ask it to actually ask me for special commands for permission. Not that I don't trust it. I actually trust it a whole bunch. But if I go back periodically or am forced to go back periodically to check, I feel like I'm just better in the flow. Now, I don't read necessarily all the output at any one point, but I am kind of trying to figure out what it's doing at any point. So right now it's trying to reproduce some issues. It's kind of cool. And here it's rebasing the commit. Now back to Familiar, right? Familiar is a little tool that I have that has conjurings, invocations, and snippets. Now conjurings are starts of new agents, right? So these are things that I will drop into a new code base. We don't need to do that right now, but it's basically a way for me to say this is a Rust and security and documentation heavy project. Take my preferred ways of interacting with agents and mash them together into an agents file, right? And invocations are actually reusable kind of tasks. And so what I'm going to do here is to say familiar invoke on codex. Explain to me the current state. So explain takes an argument. I could look at the explain invocation, but I know that this is how it goes. And this will go and start codex with this prompt, right? And it's going to run off and do its thing. So while this is going, the rebase down here has already finished. And it's telling me, okay, it has done a complete rebase. One second. Didn't understand what I wanted. But that's okay. Now, to go back here. So this is one of the things that you do a lot when agentic engineering, especially when you're working on multiple things at once, right? You're context switching a lot, which used to be hard, but it's gotten much easier now that I'm orchestrating other people to do things, or not people, orchestrating agents to do things, right? It's a bit more like management work, depending on the task. Sometimes I focus on one task because it's harder and I need to go into level 2 thinking and so on. But if it's something like you triage issues for me, or you do a rebase for me, or that sort of thing, I can actually do multiple things at once now, which is kind of cool. So let's look at the rebase. Rebase is complete. I'm going to ignore the others for now. Rebase is complete. It fetched the upstream. It rebased it. Conflict resolution. Dropped the old architecture patch. That's great. Yeah, that seems good. So I'm just going to stop the agent here. I'm relatively aggressive about stopping agents when they're done. And now I'm just going to say what is actually the diff against master. This is an old repo, so it's still master. And master has a bunch of things that we don't have. But other than that, it actually doesn't need the fix anymore. So that's kind of cool. So I understand, okay, so there are some little fixes here, but other than that, this is now something that we don't need anymore. And to verify this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this, look at the code, right? Okay, so this should not work, or maybe it should work, but it shouldn't. It should throw an error immediately. It used to hang, and it does. So I don't actually need this. This is obsolete, and that's kind of an interesting finding already. So cool. That was the first thing. It's kind of anticlimactic because it didn't actually need to resolve anything, but it did some work for me here. So I never let the agent write for me. So I will respond to the issue myself, right? I will say, or to the merge pull request and say, well, this is no longer needed in a second. And in the meantime, we can kind of check on the other agents. So one thing that's happening right here is it's still like triaging issues. So this is also happening in the same repository. If you don't want to run in the same repository, or you work on different features at the same time, I suggest you look into work trees, which is a Git concept for like virtual branches, basically. You can have multiple of these at the same time. They're very good for agentic engineering because you can have one checkout of the repository and work on multiple things at the same time, and agents are really good at working with these out of the box. Now, Familiar, for instance, has specific, it has basically a flag for using work trees, which is helpful sometimes, but you don't need that these days anymore. So a lot of Familiar is actually, it was there before a bunch of the new things like skills and so on dropped. But I still use it just because it has all of my prompts and so on. Now here we've now looked at a bunch of the open book issues, and it gave me a little bit of table here. So it reproduced 3, and then it did not reproduce a bunch of them. So I can ask it the ones that you didn't reproduce. So sometimes I care about my grammar, but actually when talking to an agent, I do not. They usually understand intent pretty well, and I'm faster when I just write down my thoughts. On the other hand, over here, it's going to give me a little bit of an overview of the system and its current state, which is cool. And here it actually says, okay, this can be closed. These things can be closed. This needs docs, and this should not be hard closed. So already I will always still look at these by hand and make sure that we're not closing anything that might still be an issue, or maybe it misunderstood something about it or whatever. But already this took a bunch of triaging that I would otherwise do by hand out of my mind, and it did it while I wasn't thinking about stuff, right? I was not here concerned with, is this, do I need to look through the bug tracker? I could do other things in the meantime, and so on. Now, this came back and gave me a little bit of an overview of the code base. So this would give me a good way of continuing work. I can now ask it what it thinks is a good way to continue, but I also I know what is a good way to continue in Alembic. I kind of have a picture in my mind of what I want to do next, so I would now start saying what I kind of want to work on next, which is I want to extend the scope of the project, and I would start the ideation process. But it helps now because it has all of this knowledge in its context window. So here I can actually now do the ideation process a little bit better. It doesn't need to read everything to understand it, but it does help when it has a little bit of an overview. I will often just start with a sentence like, read this code base and understand it at a high level so that we can move forward with some deeper changes, especially if we're doing deeper changes. If we're not, I might just go with my request, like I did with the rebase, because it understands what it means to rebase. And if it doesn't understand how to resolve a conflict, it will either come back to me or it will do something and we'll iterate based on that. So that's kind of how I use things in these multiple modes. I usually have multiple agents running at any one time. Sometimes one of them will wait for a while on my input just because I'm doing other things, just like humans would on Slack, right? I don't need to answer right away, but that's kind of the cool thing. So the communication is asynchronous by default, and I can just kind of come back to task at my own leisure, and at least one of the two of us, the agent, will not have lost context. I will have, maybe, because I worked on other things in the meantime, but we can pick up kind of where we left off without too much of a context switch on the end of the system, which is cool. So that's kind of how I use things. I haven't written much code in this session, but that's not always necessary. It can be, but often it's also just useful for things like understanding or grunt tasks, like triaging issues or rebasing stuff. Anyway, that's all I have for now. Thank you, and have a good night.